Hey guys, it's Gaz and Charlie here from Wargames Atlantic, and today we're going to be bringing some enlightenment to playtesting. Oh, playtesting.
Yeah. Why do we playtest?
Why do we playtest?
I like to think of it as like baking a cake. You know, if you want, like, I can't bake a cake, but if I wanted to learn to bake a cake, I'd have to learn to bake a cake. Get the ingredients and get the measurements right and how many times you have to whisk it and all that sort of stuff. And then at the end, you have a lovely edible cake.
Okay.
Which is like, it's like playtesting rules. So we know the ingredients as we're going into it. You know, we've got a set of core mechanics, structure, what dice we're using. Are we using inches, centimeters? Are we using templates or not templates? So on and so forth. And then to iron all those kinks out, you have to play test.
Of course you do.
But it's not just about removing the ambiguity, though that is a big part of it. And that kind of plays into the next thing is you want to make sure it's fun, right? Because what's the point in making a game that's not fun? No one's going to want
Or making a cake that doesn't taste.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Yeah. You absolutely don't want a stale cake or a dry cake, you know. Anyway, British Bake Off was on recently, you know. So we want to make sure so if it's ambiguous, it stops being less fun, right? If you have to keep going back to the rule book all the time, it's a pain in the bum.
It detracts from the environment that you're playing, and the whole point of a game, well, to me anyway, is having fun with your friends, socialising. Yeah. And it takes away that I'd say better word in character, but that, you know, that at the moment scene.
Yes,
you know.
Especially, and I think you said you hit a nail on the head as well, is by if you're with your friends, you're having fun together. If the rules aren't clear and you're arguing with each other over a situation, then again, it's taking away from the fun. There's a lot to think about when it comes to that one word, is making sure people are having fun. You know, we had situations where with Deathfield Arena, where that's the thing that we've kind of playtested most heavily, most recently, where something might have been fun for the person with advantage, but less fun for the person on the receiving end. And it is important that the loser is still having a good time.
It's about maintaining that balance throughout.
Yes.
You know, and you know, we both play games. We play many game systems, and you know, some it's down to the last dice roll, where others, you know, if it's a turn-based system, you know, turn 2, and you're like, oh, it's a foregone conclusion.
And you absolutely don't want that. You know, I think that was with Deathfield Arena, that was one of the things that was a real driving factor, was if we can have it lasting until the last dice roll. You know, if you don't know who's winning until the very last minute, until it's done, it's a good game. It's a balanced game.
Of course it is.
And
it's a fun game.
And when we're achieving that between me and Gaz, it's definitely a good a good balance.
It's a good dynamic.
Which actually leans into it. So anybody that knows Gaz, or anybody that's watched any videos with Gaz is a very competitive player. Gaz plays games to win. Now, not at the expense of having fun, but you are definitely the cheese ball of the two of us.
No, I just look at things and think, oh, that's an optimal build, or that's a good list.
Yeah.
You know, or lean into the strength.
Which is great for when it comes to playtesting, because we again, it's as you're throwing a lot of mixture into a bowl, you don't want all of it in there, because some of it just won't work together.
There's friction. It causes friction. The variables,
or it creates a situation that is too good.
Yes, yeah. and that is the key point, is that trying to create a fun environment while controlling the variables. And one of the biggest snags we come into with Deathfield Arena was the original mechanic we had was called combat effectiveness, where quick rundown, your team member could improve or he could degrade during the game, which was great.
Great fun, cool mechanic.
Sounded fantastic. What a complete whitewash. And we tried many things to overcome this one problem. It detracted too much away from the gameplay, keeping score on A, who's on what CE, and B, which model it was. And we tried everything from widgets, what you see is what you get. In fact, on, I think, the previous battle report, I put down, oh, he's on CE4, and it was completely the wrong model. but we just played through.
And tracking it, yeah. And I think that was probably one of the biggest criticisms I would have of the DFA playtest journey was, and this is entirely on me, because the CA mechanic was my brainchild.
It was great. I still think it's great.
It's a cool mechanic, but in practice, it detracted from the playing of the game. You know,
Way too much.
The speed, the flow, etc. But and the negative would be we probably hung on to it for a little bit too long. You know, and like Gaz has alluded to, we went through so many different ways of trying to manage it before actually going, you know what we need to do is we need to keep the essence of it, but change the way it interacts with the rules and the game. So we went from a sliding scale of 1 to 10, where you know your team model could start on 5 and finish on 10, to just having a base stat line that they would receive negative modifiers to, stress, as we're calling it now. So the model, as bad things happen, he gets stressed. As he does good things, he removes stress. So he goes back to his original starting point. And that has been so much faster, easier to work with. But it maintained that essence of the rule originally.
It did. And even that, I say, small change, it then cascaded down because our whole entire activation system for this game was originally based on what combat zone you were in, which was determined by your combat effectiveness. So, of course, by removing that, we had to then change the activation system.
And one of the things we really liked about Deathfield's Arena was the fact that it had a very unique activation system.
Extremely.
So what we didn't want to do is take that away and go back to just an alternating activation or steal something else from somebody else in random activation, etc. We still wanted to keep a unique activation system. And that, again, what was born from that is the word I'm looking for, is something again that I think is really unique.
Very unique is the current model we have now. And I say current because things can change in the future, things always change. But what we have now, after all this playtesting, after various scenarios, we have a solid, absolute solid foundation on which to build on, you know, and all the teams are built from it, and it is very unique, definitely unique,
very unique
in what we've done, and that is born, like Charlie said, from various scenarios when it comes to playtesting, you know, because we use a D10 system for this particular game, and you know the probability is you'd think it'd be quite easy to figure out, but how many times scenarios have we put things into the, you know, should we call it the calculator?
The spreadsheets.
The spreadsheets, yeah. And it looks great on paper, but then when you come to the tabletop and you roll 2 1s or 2 10s, and then that completely and utterly shuts down this amazing ability, and you're like, oh.
And I think it's an interesting point to discuss, actually, because you're right. We can have a calculator, we can work out the maths, we can math hammer this as much as we like, but for us, and certainly what's become the War Games Atlantic way of playtesting is, okay, we can build it all on a spreadsheet, but that's our starting point. It's not what's going to dictate the final result. So what we end up doing is bringing it to the table and then running it through its paces. Thank you. And rather, I think one of the weirdest things about playtesting that we've ended up kind of doing as general is, instead of rolling the dice once, we'll roll it at least 3 times to try and get an average. And you would say, so on a D10, if you needed a 6 up, if you roll 2 dice, at least one of them theoretically should come through as a 6 up. But in practice, that's not how it works. It's also not how averages work, really. No. You know, when you get into it.
No.
So rolling 3 times and playing with these, you know, the unit rules, the statistics, over and over and over again until we go, okay, it now feels balanced. And what did you call it? The rule of feel is that what is it? Does it feel balanced?
Does it feel? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. If it feels balanced and it plays balanced, then why should it be upgraded or penalised on points if the real feel's there?
And we definitely had some situations of the complete reverse of that as well, where on paper this should be balanced, but every time we played with that particular unit, it always felt like it was costed too high.
Like
so
my Jaeger auto rifle.
So we ended up running them down in cost because it just
and in abilities
because it just didn't work.
And you didn't like it.
Well, and that was at the very beginning. Yeah, everything's changed.
Everything's changed. Massively changed.
So the testing out statistics and testing out probabilities is definitely a big part of playtesting. And we could just take it on face value. Well, the sums say that this is balanced, but we all know we're all capable of coming to the table and rolling 6 1s in a dice roll.
That's you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's you. And I always say to him, you're going to roll 2 1s now, and he does. And I'm so sorry.
So we've got to think about all of those eventualities. Yeah. So it's about finding balance, not necessarily in just tweaking the numbers, but maybe adding in a fail-safe mechanic, so that if a gun has 1 shot, and that guy might be rolling that on a 3-up or a 4-up. There's still a good chance they could fail, and rolling 1 dice and failing always feels like the worst, So you throw in a reroll mechanic to just be a little bit more forgiving.
Now, believe me, for those watching at home, we have argued about this many a times. Now, I'll flip that story on its head. If you'd rolled that hit, would you be thinking about a reroll?
No, but it's never taken on that one situation, is it? No, that's the point. That's the whole point of playtesting. We've been playtesting Deathfield's Arena intensely now for 6 months plus.
Yep.
And it's a lot of gaming. It's a lot of gaming. And the thing is, it's not gaming, because you don't roll the dice 3 times in a game. You accept the result that you roll. And
going through every single stage of that game, every activation, and we have like a mini summary after each activation. How did that feel? Did that work? Was the probability there? Was that enough dice? Too many dice? So many questions. We should write these questions down, actually, because we ask different ones each time.
I think I've got a good question to finish the whole thing on. I won't do it just yet, because I did the one thing I wanted to talk about, which is there's always the sticking points. And we went into we're using Deathfield's Arena because it's the most recent experience. It's a good kind of benchmark for us to kind of talk about playtesting from. But we went into it thinking we don't want templates. For various reasons. Some of it is influenced by production costs. It costs money to make a template, so we have to think about that.
There is that.
But we wrote rules for flamethrowers. They seemed cool. They were great in writing. You play it through. They played fine. They did. The rules worked for a flamethrower, but
they didn't.
Well, no, they did work, but they didn't. It was missing a template, wasn't it? It just didn't. It wasn't as fun as putting a template down and being like, especially when it comes to flamethrowers, like the template represents that gush of fire or whatever it is, that represents.
But do you know one of the sticking points to me for a template? And again, it's a double-edged sword. Is when you're trying to measure out anything in the game, ranges, movements, in a very scenery-heavy environment, you always get that. Oh, whoops, I've knocked that. It was very...
Yeah, of course,
and rulers and things, they always knock something. And I was just like, we destroyed more barricades than we actually... We did anything, and we're like, okay, how do we get around this? Oh, no, just an easy template you can manage quite easily. And yes, there'll be complex environments where, you have to wriggle it underneath or whatnot, but a template was the way to go.
And it's just fun, you know what I mean?
It's visually it's fun, but it cleared up a lot of the rules that were open-ended for us, just by having a template. And not saying we tried to be different, we tried to be quirky, No,
I think that, if we're completely honest, the original concept of not having a template was probably born from a production point of view. It's like, okay, it's one less thing to have to pay for and
just thought we were trying to be
manufacture,
different.
etc. But at the end of the day, the decision was made that actually templates are better. One of the other things we went into the game, with a clear direction on is we don't want tons of tokens in this game. We want to keep tokens down to an absolute minimum. And that presents a lot of constraints to the rules writings.
Massively.
Because there's tons of cool concepts you can have where
Effects.
it requires you to have something that represents
lasting effects.
a lasting effect.
Yeah,
But what was fun about that was finding ways around it to achieve the same things without having to put a token down on the board.
We're not a fan of tokens. And
Loads of goblins.
If Andy watches this, he can be like, red in the face. Because, I love Baron's War. I'm a champion of Baron's War. But, there's quite a few tokens in that. So we wanted to try and create a clutterless environment where it was just about you, your opponent, and your models, and what you were doing in that specific instance. And because the way the game is structured, with it is unique activation system, then there's no real cleanup phase.
No, and I think that's one of the greater challenges for doing
Housekeeping.
death fields was when you don't have a housekeeping phase, when you don't have an end of round, how do you work out scenario?
It's extreme.
What the win conditions look like, and that's been a real challenge, and that was really interesting. But again, it's what it boils down to from a playtesting perspective. It's about having a vision, and understanding what it is you want to achieve, working around that and with that as a steering point. That's your North Star. That's where we're aiming to.
That's your North Star.
Yeah. However, you have to accept that sometimes it's maybe you don't want to aim for the North Star anymore. You need to aim for that star just off to the right, because being too rigid on that point is actually becoming a negative.
And it's too constricting.
It becomes too constricting,
Yeah,
exactly.
it does. It becomes massively constricting. And we ran into this block a number of times. Originally, for the death fields, you can have a look at the old battle report. In fact, don't look at that. You can buy equipment and upgrades, etc. But the more we went into it, but the more we were thinking that's just another variable that doesn't complement either a scenario rule, an army rule, a weapon rule, and it was way too much. And we ended up spending more time off board, compiling lists than we did actually playing on board. And we're like, no, stop.
And
Hard stop.
At the time, at the beginning, it was one of the selling points for us was having that complete control over customizing your team.
Yeah.
But what it ultimately presented, the greatest challenge was balance, wasn't it? Because you had so many variables. You took your man, your unit. You then chose what skills, what abilities, what equipment they had.
Yep.
You had, you did have a limited number of slots, but 4 slots can still be, the amount of variation you can have on 4 slots was insane.
It could have changed the feel of a team member for a specific faction.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And the breadth was too much. And yes, we could have narrowed it down a little bit to have, maybe 10. But even then, trying to play test through all of that, it was too much.
Exactly, and I think that was the point I was going to summarise that subject on is what would have ended up. What the problem we were going to have there was at what point would we ever have been happy with the balance?
We wouldn't have been happy.
It was impossible.
Nope.
And it would have meant that they probably never would have been a Deathfields Arena game because we'd still be playtesting it in 2028.
Yeah, literally.
So we then restructured down to fixed units. So you have specific team members that come with set equipment, set abilities, but within a team there are multiple unit types, variations, unit types that all do different things, have different roles in the battlefield. Maybe they do the same thing but slightly different ways as well, so that you've still got that flavor within flavor. So if you want a ranged guy, you might have a ranged guy that has this type of weapon versus that type of weapon. You've got that variety still.
I'll throw out one example. We looked at our sniper / sharpshooters. Within the game, there's a mechanic of intervening terrain or cover. And, having a scope would that be, having a telescopic scope, would that be able to mitigate, what the firer sees left and right of him and just concentrate on the target, especially a magnified scope? So in the end, we built in a rule, didn't we, that it ignores intervening terrain/cover. It wouldn't ignore cover per se if they're still beyond a barricade, because that's still something hard. But could it ignore intervening? Yes, of course it can. So we achieved the same effect. Just not going around the merry-go-round like 50,000 times.
Which we did.
Yeah, we did.
But you have to. And I think what I've always
fun.
Yeah,
joking. It wasn't.
No. Yeah. And what I've said since we've kind of arrived at where we are now, is that if we hadn't gone on the journey, we wouldn't have the huge toolbox of equipment, ability rules, skills, traits, all those things that now make up a single unit, where we've got this lovely little catalogue we can just pick from and go, well, we want a guy that is represents like a breacher. So they'll have a shotgun, but then they'll have rules that allow them to maybe move a bit faster or move through cover or so on and so forth. And we would, if we'd gone into it with the idea of where we are now of fixed unit types, we probably wouldn't have such a broad range of things to pick from to kind of make those units up now.
Absolutely not. And we've got to kind of apologise to Andy at this stage, because that was Andy's first suggestion.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
fixed units, and we were both like, no, I want to be able to customise. I want to be able to customise the hair, the hair colour. And whereas 3 months later, we were like, sorry, Andy.
Yeah.
And he was like,
but I stand by the fact that what it did allow us to do was build up that catalogue of abilities and stuff as well.
To go through the process, and that leads us into kind of the end game. It's not easy.
No,
it's not. It is fun. But like Charlie always says to me, Gaz, you're not playing to win, you're playing to test it. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry.
But then sometimes I'm like, Gaz, I need you to play both sides as if you're trying to win with both sides.
What you would do in this situation, Gaz,
like, we have to push it.
You have to trust
it. Absolutely. And so one last thing before I ask my final question. You have to bring other people in. It's all well and good. We've got, we do have a lot of gaming experience. We have played a lot of games between us. We're both, in our, 40s, and we've been playing since we were early teens, and we both love playing lots of different games. But it's still only two people's experiences.
Exactly, two people's opinions.
So bringing people in and teaching them, and then seeing if they can then do it by themselves afterwards. Different types of players as well. You want like a broad breadth of the guy that just likes to roll dice like me, to the guy like you and Tom who want to bring the most optimal team possible. Because you need people to come in and look at it from a different angle, and that is it's invaluable. Even if it's only half a dozen people, it's still half a dozen more than the guys that have created it. So
absolutely. And the people we've had come into playtest, I mean, so far, unless they're just being nice, have picked up very, very easily, and have, when someone's into a game, and, I'll talk layman's now. We've all played games before, and you've been telling your opponent what you're doing, and you look at your opponent, and what they're doing, they're on the phone going, yep, cool, happy days, yep, I'll do that. But, we've had a lot of high engagements with the people who play tested, which has been fantastic, and a big thank you to those people. And just hopefully what we perceive translates, into Deaf Field's arena, and I think it will. I'm quite confident, actually. Normally I wouldn't stand by my decision.
I like that as your benchmark as well.
I'd hide behind you, but I'm confident.
That benchmark, though, of again, you don't stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
if you're engaged, you're having fun, you're not picking your phone up to doom scroll or whatever. I mean, we were playing a game one night where we'd got to where we are now, really, with the rules. And we were playing a game rather than doing the whole roll 3 times. We were actually playing a scenario through to stress test it as a game.
You won that one.
And I did win that one. It's a rare occasion that I win a game.
Bad dice.
And neither of us, we were both due to knock off and get home to our respective partners and our responsibilities outside of work.
We got in trouble for that, didn't we?
Just 10 more minutes. Let's just see the game.
We were like 45 minutes late. We got in trouble for that. But that was because we were engaged. And, time flies when you're having fun.
And I think that brings me to the question of, when do you know you've finished playtesting? And there's two things for me. There's that first one which you said, if you're enjoying it now without finding fault,
Yeah,
you know you're there.
that's true. Yeah, but it's second nature.
The other one for me is when there was a point at which I was like, we're now just second guessing everything, and it's because you're still in playtest mode, but there's nothing to fix. Yeah. Because you're now going back around the same questions over again.
Not broken, don't try and fix it.
Don't try and fix it again.
You're absolutely right, actually.
Yeah.
Now, that's a very good way of putting it. Because now, like you say, we're trying to fix things that aren't broken, and which is great. We're still coming up with new ideas, new kind of little schemes, so to speak. But we're there, and hopefully, we can get the final bits of playtesting done. Get Big Andy's thumbs up, from Andy, and then yeah, we're done. But what a journey! Would I do it again? No. Am I going to have to do it again? Yes.
Yes. Don't lie. You loved it.
I do, but it's not easy. Like I said in the last
yeah, of course.
piece of content we did, nothing's easy in this industry. You've got to have the drive and the passion, but of course I'll do it again.
Yeah.
I won't do it again. I'm only joking. But yeah, for many more game systems. Are we allowed to say what game systems we've got?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, we've got classic fantasy battles that we're in the thick of playtesting.
CFB.
And again, lessons learned going into that is what we've gone through with DFA has helped with CFB,
right.
Classic Fantasy Battles. We've got Josh's Qua system is evolving. There's a new set of the rules, or an updated version of the rules available as a PDF now, but there'll be a box game for that. And then there's the big battle game on the horizon for Qua, where you go from skirmishes to larger
That's
scale
what I'm
games.
interested in. I play Qua low, like I say, low level. It's not low model count. I want to play bigger.
Yeah.
I think the system of the Qua would be a lot more interesting on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
Because it forces a lot more options in your in your microclimates.
Yes, yeah.
And those, I love a gamble, and that's what it'll be.
Yeah.
There's micro scenarios, and you've got to pick which one the best one to use your resources on. Yeah, I think I'm enjoying that.
And I think what's fun about having all these systems either in closed development or open development. Joking aside, we talk about when you finish playtesting, but you never really finish playtesting, are you? Because once it hits the world and everybody gets to see it and play it, there's going to be things that have been missed. There's going to be things that we haven't thought of, that the playtesters didn't discover, that even Andy hasn't thought of. And that's why you end up with a second edition and a third edition.
Get
and
a comment
so
from
forth.
A. Aronson, I'll be like, oh, damn, how did we not see that?
Yeah.
But that's the point of unleashing it to the world and the community.
Yeah.
And, we all know that the War Games Atlantic community is not shy of telling us their feedback. So please do. Hopefully we'll be releasing...
DFA should be January.
I was going to talk about a battle report, but you swing straight ahead, buddy, with the release date.
So yeah, we should be out in January with it. I'm really confident that through the playtesting, we've got a really, really good, fun game system with some really unique mechanics.
Yeah.
It's over the first sort of few months, we'll be adding rules for all of our DFA miniatures. We've even talked about adding rules in for things that aren't Death Fields branded as well. So
literally had that conversation about half an hour ago.
Maybe some Iron Core stuff. Josh is keen to give us some stuff for the Qua, which could be good fun.
Awesome.
Because it's an arena game, it's meant to be, it's
open universe.
Very much so.
We're very open to concepts and stuff. Anyway, we normally have a timer because we love to waffle.
Yeah,
I forgot to put the timer on, so God knows how long it's been running for.
Shut it down.
No. Yeah, well, thank you very much for listening to us. Hopefully we made some form of sense there.
Yeah.
But more importantly, you get the flavour and the feel of where we're coming from when we talk about playtesting and the development of our own game systems.
If you've got any questions on playtesting that have come up as a result of the video, ask them in the comments, because one of the next things we'll be doing is another question time where we do a Q&A. So any questions, we'll be collecting them from these YouTube videos as well as Facebook and Instagram, etc. as well.
And as it comes for Death Fields Arena and Classic Fantasy Battles, we do have separate Facebook groups for those that are really interested in the development, in the product development, in the game development, and we'll put links for them in the thingy description.
Description.
That's the one. Description below. Yeah. You know. So awesome.
Fab.
Anything else?
Great. No, I'm done. I'll shut my.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
It's been about 40 minutes, but no, thank you very much for listening. And if you made it to the end, thank you. And we shall see you for question time, Q&A next time, 02. Take care.